Welcome back to Deep Dive Stoic.
It's great to be back.
In today's deep dive, we're going to explore 10 Stoic secrets to master your mind. You know, looking at all the sources you send over, it's clear you're really interested in how these, 2,000-year-old ideas can help us with the challenges we're all facing today.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to try to do. I mean, Stoicism is all about taking control of your mind, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack 10 key secrets straight from the wisdom you found in your reading that can help us do just that. So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So Stoic secret number 1 is all about the power of perception.
Perfect place to start, I think. A lot of Stoic thinkers, especially Marcus Aurelius, really emphasized how much our interpretations shape our experiences.
Yeah.
He actually said, and this is a powerful one, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Yeah, it really drives home the idea that happiness and resilience, they don't come from changing the world around us, but from transforming our inner world.
That quote, I mean, it really gets you thinking, right? How many times have we felt like, oh, this is just happening to me?
Yeah.
And, maybe if we looked at it differently, we could actually handle those situations way better.
Right.
So how do we actually do that? How do we consciously shape our perceptions?
Well, one practical tool that comes up a lot in your sources and that fits really well with this Stoic idea is reflective journaling. It's like a daily practice of observing and then actively reframing your thoughts, So you start by writing down your initial reactions to things, especially the stuff that brings up negative emotions. And then, here's the key, you challenge those perceptions. Can you see the situation from another angle? Is there a more, neutral or maybe even positive way to look at it?
Yeah.
And then lastly, you think about how changing your perspective affects how you feel.
So you're basically training yourself to see things differently.
Exactly.
Okay, so one of your sources also talked about challenging negative beliefs by finding evidence that contradicts them. Can you give us an example of how someone could do that, like in a real-life situation? Let's say someone always thinks I'm terrible at presenting my ideas.
That's a good one, yeah. So to challenge that belief, you would actively look back and remember times when your presentations actually went well.
Right.
Maybe when you felt confident or when your ideas actually led to something good happening. Even small wins count. By bringing those positive examples to mind, you start to weaken that negative perception. It's about building a more balanced and realistic view.
Makes sense. Okay, that gives us a really good way to start working with our perceptions. Now, Stoic secret number 2 is all about rationality and control. This seems like a natural next step after understanding the power of perception, right?
Yeah, definitely. If our perceptions are shaping our reality, then rationality becomes our guide for navigating those perceptions. And like your sources pointed out, the Stoics place a huge emphasis on reason. It's that uniquely human ability that lets us see the difference between what we can change and what we can't. Our thoughts, our judgments, our actions. Those are things we have influence over. External events, opinions of others, the past, those are things we can't control.
That distinction seems really important for mental well-being, wouldn't you say? It's like, instead of trying to control everything, we focus on what we can actually influence and accept what's beyond our reach.
Exactly. And in a way, it frees us up,
Right.
Because we're not wasting energy on things we can't change. Your sources talked about Stoicism, encouraging us to use reason as a compass in life. It can get pretty turbulent out there, So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, rationality helps us cut through all the emotional noise. It helps us to see things objectively and tell the difference between what's truly good, virtue, truly bad, vice, and everything else that falls somewhere in between. By focusing on developing virtue, things like wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, we're aligning ourselves with what's actually in our power to change.
It's really important to note, as your sources did, that Stoicism isn't about suppressing our emotions.
No, not at all.
Right. It's more about how we engage with them.
Exactly. Emotions are a natural part of being human. The Stoics weren't saying we should try to get rid of them. Instead, they said we should use our reason to understand and manage them. It's about acknowledging our feelings without letting them control our actions. Reason helps us figure out if our emotions are valid and if we're reacting in the right way.
So what kind of practical exercises can help us develop that rationality and focus on what we control?
Well, one powerful technique that came up in a few of your sources is practicing rational decision-making. When you have to make a choice, take some time to list the pros and cons, but more importantly, look at each option through the lens of reason and your values. Which choice aligns best with what you believe is right?
Hmm.
And when you're feeling overwhelmed by a situation, try listing everything involved and then sorting it into two categories: things you can control and things you can't. Focusing on the things you can control can be incredibly empowering.
I like that. It shifts your energy from worrying to taking action.
Right.
So, Stoic secret number 3 takes us deeper into the idea of inner peace, right?
Absolutely. It's all about mind control and inner serenity. The basic idea here is that true peace doesn't come from what's happening around us, but from within, by mastering our minds.
One of your sources really emphasized that the turmoil we feel, the emotional ups and downs, they're not actually caused by events themselves. It's our judgments and interpretations of those events that really get us worked up.
That's powerful, isn't it?
It is, because it means we have the power to change how we experience things.
Absolutely. If we can learn to manage our thoughts, our beliefs, how we react emotionally, then we can achieve a sense of inner calm no matter what's going on around us.
That's a really appealing idea. So how does Stoicism suggest we go about doing that?
Well, it encourages us to understand our emotions through reason,
Okay.
to see them as signals to be analyzed rather than just reacting blindly,
Right.
It's about choosing how we respond.
It seems like mindfulness would be a really key tool in developing this kind of mind control.
It's absolutely essential. Cultivating mindfulness and being aware of the present moment, those are key to gaining control over our minds. When we consciously focus our attention on the here and now, on our thoughts and sensations without judgment, we can break free from worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. And we find peace in the present moment.
Your sources also talked about self-reflection. How does that contribute to inner serenity?
Well, when we take the time to reflect, to really look inward, we start to see patterns in how we think and react emotionally.
Yeah.
By understanding why we react in certain ways, we can choose to respond differently in the future. It's about aligning our actions with our values. That creates a sense of inner harmony, less inner conflict, and that leads to more mental strength and serenity.
There's also this really interesting concept of an inner citadel that came up in a few of your sources. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius used this metaphor a lot.
Yeah.
The inner citadel represents that unbreakable fortress within us, our rational mind and our capacity for virtue. It's a mental and spiritual sanctuary that we build by developing wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. This inner space becomes a refuge from the chaos of the world outside. No matter what's happening around us, our peace and integrity are safe inside.
So it's like building resilience from the inside out. What are some practical ways we can cultivate this mind control and inner serenity?
There are a few practices that can really help. Mindful breathing is a great way to bring yourself back to the present and to detach from those swirling thoughts.
Yeah.
When you're feeling overwhelmed, just pause and focus on your breath for a few minutes. Another key practice is making a conscious choice to not let others dictate your emotional state. Remember that you have the power to choose how you react. Don't give that power away to someone else.
That's really powerful. Okay, let's move on to Stoic secret number 4. Mastering responses to external events. Feels like a continuation of that inner control we were just talking about.
It is, definitely. We've been focusing on mastering our inner world. Now, this secret bridges the gap between our inner world and the external world.
Right.
It emphasizes a really important Stoic principle. We may not always control what happens to us, but we always control how we choose to respond.
And that brings us back to that idea of the dichotomy of control, right?
Yeah.
It's about putting our energy into our actions, judgments, and attitudes, the things we can actually influence, rather than trying to control external events, which often just leads to frustration.
Right. We spin our wheels, get nowhere. A crucial part of mastering our responses is changing how we view challenges. Instead of immediately seeing them as negative or impossible to overcome, Stoicism encourages us to see them as potential opportunities for growth, for practicing virtue.
That's such a different perspective, isn't it?
It is.
Turning setbacks into chances to build character and resilience. Your sources also mention the importance of emotional intelligence in this process.
Absolutely. Developing emotional intelligence, being able to recognize our own emotions and those of others, understanding how they affect us, and then responding thoughtfully and in line with our values. That's essential for mastering our responses. It allows us to pause before we react, to engage our rational mind, and to choose a more reasoned and virtuous path.
Okay, so what are some practical ways we can work on mastering our responses? One of your sources talked about something called the Stoic pause.
Yeah, the Stoic pause. It's so simple, but it's surprisingly effective. Whenever you're faced with a challenge or you feel a strong emotion coming up, just consciously pause for a few seconds before you say or do anything. That short pause gives you space to step back from the emotion, engage your rational mind, and choose a more thoughtful response.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And here's another practice. Think about how you usually react to criticism. Instead of getting defensive, what if you took a moment to consider if there's any truth in it, any feedback you can actually use? Focus on learning and improving, not just protecting your ego.
There's a theme that keeps coming up in Stoic teachings, wouldn't you say? It's this idea of learning from adversity.
It's a big one. Stoicism doesn't see adversity as something to avoid at all costs. It's part of life, and it's a powerful catalyst for growth. Every challenge, every difficult person we encounter is an opportunity to practice and strengthen our virtues. When we embrace this mindset, adversity transforms into valuable lessons that build our inner strength.
That's such a powerful way to approach the tough times, right? Okay, so Stoic secret number 5 is about finding resilience through acceptance.
This one gets to the heart of why we suffer. It's our tendency to resist what is. Stoicism tells us to radically accept reality. A lot of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our inner resistance to them.
It's really important to make clear, as your sources did, that this acceptance isn't the same as giving up or resigning yourself to a bad situation.
Definitely not. Acceptance in the Stoic sense is an active choice to acknowledge reality as it is, without denial or wishful thinking. It's about seeing things clearly and then focusing our energy on what we can influence within that reality. It's working with the circumstances, not fighting against them.
So it's that balance between recognizing what we can control and accepting what we can't. And from that acceptance, we find true resilience.
Exactly. Resilience, in the Stoic sense, is the ability to face adversity with a calm and composed mind, to adapt to life's challenges without being broken by them. It's not about avoiding difficulties, but about meeting them head-on with clarity, rationality, and an understanding of what we can and cannot change.
Your sources also talked about mindful acceptance. How does that fit into the picture?
Mindful acceptance brings the practice of mindfulness to the forefront. It means paying attention to our thoughts and feelings about a situation without judging them. We simply acknowledge them as they are, without trying to change them or push them away. This allows us to experience our emotions in a healthier way and builds resilience because we're not adding to the difficulty by resisting it.
It's interesting how Stoicism also finds inspiration in nature for this principle of acceptance.
Yes, they also look to nature as a model. The seasons change, storms come and go, and nature adapts and endures without resistance. In the same way, we are encouraged to embrace the natural flow of life. Change and impermanence are woven into the fabric of existence.
Resisting that flow only creates suffering. So what are some ways we can cultivate this resilience through acceptance in our daily lives?
One practice that can be really helpful is using daily acceptance affirmations. Each morning, try to pick one thing that's outside of your control, like the traffic, the weather, or someone else's behavior, then consciously affirm your acceptance of it. This small practice can gradually increase your ability to accept bigger things in life that you can't control.
It's like building a muscle.
Exactly.
Yee.
And when you experience a setback, instead of getting caught up in frustration and resistance, try to see it as part of your journey. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this?
That's a great way to reframe those moments. Okay, let's move on to Stoic secret number 6, fostering emotional agility.
This is about having a healthy and balanced relationship with our emotions. We experience the full range of feelings without being overwhelmed by them.
So it's not about becoming emotionless, but learning to navigate our emotions more effectively.
That's it, exactly. Rationality is key to emotional agility. Stoicism teaches us that while emotions are a natural part of being human, our rational mind should guide how we respond to them. We need to understand our emotions, see what triggers them, and how they might be affecting our judgments and behaviors.
So how do we actually develop this emotional agility? It sounds like mindfulness and self-awareness are important pieces of the puzzle.
They are. Regularly practicing mindfulness and becoming more aware of ourselves allows us to observe our emotions as they come up. We see what thoughts and situations trigger them and recognize that they often pass quickly. By becoming more attuned to our emotional patterns, we can make conscious choices about how we respond, instead of being controlled by our feelings.
It's about finding that middle ground between acknowledging our emotions and not letting them take over.
Absolutely. Emotional agility is about finding that balance between feeling our emotions and responding rationally. It means letting ourselves feel without judgment, while also using our reason to evaluate the situation and choose the best course of action. This balance helps us navigate tough situations with both empathy and logic.
Your sources also suggested we can view our emotions as learning opportunities. What did they mean by that?
When we reflect on our emotional responses, we gain a deeper understanding of our values, beliefs, and vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Understanding why certain situations bring up strong emotions can tell us a lot about what truly matters to us. And it can show us where we might need to build more resilience or adjust our perspectives. It's about using our emotions as data points for self-discovery and growth.
What's a practical exercise we can do to develop this emotional agility?
One technique that works well is emotional labeling. When you notice a strong emotion coming up, take a moment to label it. Say to yourself, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling joyful. Then, try to understand why you might be feeling that way, and think about the most logical and constructive way to respond. On the flip side, when you experience positive emotions, really savor them, appreciate them, and ask yourself what those feelings tell you about your values and what gives your life meaning.
That's a really helpful exercise. Now, let's explore Stoic secret number 7, Stoic detachment. This one sometimes gets misunderstood, don't you think?
It definitely does. People often think Stoic detachment means being cold or uncaring,
Yeah.
but it's not about that at all. It's about creating a healthy distance between ourselves and things we can't control, both external circumstances and even our own emotions. It's about finding a sense of inner peace that doesn't depend on fleeting and uncontrollable factors.
So it's like setting a boundary between ourselves and the unpredictability of life.
That's a good way to put it. Stoic detachment is about understanding the difference between our core self, our values and virtues, and the events that happen around us. While we're naturally affected by those events, we can recognize that they don't define us. Our true value comes from our character and our commitment to virtue.
How does mindfulness play a role in this idea of detachment?
Well, mindfulness helps us observe our thoughts and feelings as they come up without getting swept away by them or identifying with them too strongly. This ability to observe our inner experience without judgment or getting entangled is a form of detachment. It allows us to experience emotions without being overwhelmed or controlled by them.
The Stoic emphasis on the impermanence of all things also seems relevant here.
Absolutely. Understanding and accepting that everything in life is temporary helps us let go of the desire for things to stay the same. We see that clinging to things that will inevitably change only causes suffering. Embracing impermanence allows us to appreciate what we have while we have it, without getting too attached.
So how does Stoic detachment help us make better decisions?
When we're not overly attached to specific outcomes or driven by intense emotions, we can assess situations more clearly and make decisions based on our principles and long-term goals. We're not just reacting to the moment. Detachment gives us the mental space for clearer thinking and more rational choices.
What are some practical ways we can work on cultivating this Stoic detachment in our daily lives?
One helpful practice is to do a detachment reflection. Think about a situation that usually triggers a strong emotional reaction in you. Then try to see it from a detached perspective, as if you were an outside observer. Another valuable practice is to consciously let go of worries about things that are beyond your direct control. When you feel overwhelmed by world events or what other people are doing, gently shift your focus back to what you can control, your own thoughts and actions in your own life.
That's a great way to manage anxiety about things we can't change. Okay, let's explore Stoic secret number 8, reflective meditation.
Reflective meditation in the Stoic tradition goes beyond just quieting the mind. It's about thoughtfully examining our thoughts, actions, and experiences through the lens of Stoic principles. It's actively engaging with our inner world to gain self-awareness and align our lives with virtue.
One of the key elements you mentioned is self-examination. What does that involve?
Self-examination means regularly taking a look at our behavior, our judgments, and our attitudes. We ask ourselves, have I acted according to the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance? Where did I fall short? What could I have done differently? This honest self-reflection helps us identify areas for improvement and guides us toward living a more virtuous and fulfilling life.
How does mindfulness fit into reflective meditation?
Well, the focus isn't solely on being present in the moment, as it is in some other types of meditation. Mindfulness is still important. It helps us observe our thoughts and feelings without getting carried away by them or judging ourselves too harshly. This non-judgmental awareness creates a space for honest self-assessment and deeper understanding.
So it's about intentionally learning from our experiences, using Stoic wisdom as a guide.
Exactly. A big part of reflective meditation involves reflecting on our daily experiences, the good and the bad. We then analyze these experiences through the lens of Stoicism. What do they reveal about our character? How do we tend to respond to the world? This process helps us spot patterns, both helpful and unhelpful, so we can make more conscious choices in the future.
How do we bring the teachings of Stoic philosophers into this practice?
Engaging with the writings of Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca gives us a wealth of wisdom to draw on. We might read a passage and then consider how it applies to our own lives. How do the principles they discuss relate to our experiences? How can we embody those principles more fully in our thoughts and actions? It's about using their insights to guide our self-improvement.
What's a practical way to make reflective meditation part of our routine?
A good practice is to set aside some time each evening for Stoic reflection. Before you go to bed, take 10 or 15 minutes to review your day. Think about specific events and interactions. Did you act in accordance with your values? Where could you have done better? Then plan how you might approach similar situations in the future. You can even mentally rehearse challenging scenarios and imagine yourself responding with Stoic calm and reason.
That's a great way to end the day and consciously shape how you act in the future. Let's move on to Stoic secret number 9. Embracing amor fati. This is a really profound concept.
It is. Amor fati, love of fate, is a central idea in Stoicism that goes beyond simply accepting what happens to us. It's about actively loving and embracing everything that life brings, the good and the bad. It's recognizing that all experiences, even the tough ones, are part of our journey. They shape us and can ultimately help us grow and understand ourselves and the world better.
Your sources emphasize that amor fati is not the same as passive resignation. Can you explain the difference?
Sure, resignation feels helpless and defeated. But amor fati is a proactive and positive way of approaching life. It's about embracing our circumstances with enthusiasm and purpose, knowing that even in hardship, there are opportunities for learning and growth.
It's about finding joy and meaning in whatever happens instead of wishing things were different.
Exactly.
So it's about changing how we view the challenges we face.
Right. To embrace amor fati, we need to consciously shift our perspective on difficulties. Instead of seeing them as unwelcome obstacles, we can choose to see them as necessary and even valuable parts of our story. Maybe this challenge will make me stronger, more compassionate, or wiser. This reframing helps us approach challenges with a more positive and constructive mindset.
It seems like mindfulness and gratitude are important for cultivating amor fati.
They are. Mindfulness lets us fully experience the present moment without resistance. Gratitude helps us appreciate the good things in our lives, even amidst challenges. It helps us find value and meaning in all our experiences. By cultivating these qualities, we become better able to love our fate, whatever it may bring.
It takes courage and maybe even optimism to truly embrace this kind of radical acceptance, doesn't it?
It does. Embracing amor fati requires us to face whatever life throws at us with open arms, and to believe that even difficult experiences can ultimately lead to something good. This mindset allows us to live more fully, without constantly wishing for a different past or future.
So how can we start to cultivate amor fati in our own lives?
One powerful practice is gratitude journaling, but with a twist. Instead of just listing things you're grateful for, try focusing on finding the positive or the lesson within challenging events. Each day, write down one difficult thing you faced, and then identify at least one positive aspect or one lesson you learned from it. This will help you train your mind to find value in all circumstances. And when you're going through a particularly tough time, like losing a job or dealing with a personal setback, try to focus on the potential opportunities that might come from this change, even if you can't see them right away. This is the essence of loving your fate, seeing the potential for growth and new possibilities within it.
That's a powerful way to shift our mindset from resisting what is to embracing it. And finally, let's explore Stoic secret number 10, Stoic indifference.
Stoic indifference, the last secret we'll cover today, is about developing a balanced state of mind, no matter what's happening around us. It involves separating what truly matters, our character and virtue, from things that are ultimately indifferent, things we can't directly control that shouldn't affect our inner peace.
So it's revisiting that core Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control, but focusing specifically on how we manage our emotional responses to things we can't control.
That's right. We're encouraged to focus on developing our virtues, things like wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, because those are the things we have the power to change. They're what makes better people.
Right.
And towards everything else, wealth, health, reputation, pleasure, even life and death, we practice a form of indifference. This doesn't mean we don't care about these things. It means we don't let our happiness or distress hinge on them. We recognize that they're impermanent and outside of our control.
It seems like the goal is to achieve emotional balance or equanimity.
Exactly. Stoic indifference helps us cultivate equanimity, a state of mental calmness and composure. We learn not to get too carried away by good things or overly upset by bad things. We respond to everything with a level head and a clear mind, which is essential for making good decisions and living according to our values.
So how do we practice Stoic indifference in our everyday lives?
It's about being mindful of our reactions to things that happen. When something happens, we pause and ask ourselves, is my emotional response appropriate for how important this actually is? Is this something I can actually control? If not, we gently redirect our focus back to what we can influence, our own thoughts and actions, and try to stay calm and indifferent to the outcome.
And this practice of indifference helps us build resilience when things inevitably go wrong.
Absolutely. By learning not to be thrown off balance by the ups and downs of life, we develop a strong and resilient core. We're able to navigate challenges with more strength and composure, remaining relatively undisturbed by the chaos that may surround us.
Can you give us a final exercise to incorporate Stoic indifference into our lives?
Of course. One helpful exercise is to practice staying calm when you experience minor inconveniences, like waiting in a long line or being delayed. Remind yourself that these things are small in the grand scheme of things, and don't let them steal your peace. Another practice is to observe your reaction when plans change or things don't go your way. Instead of getting disappointed or upset, see if you can use the unexpected time for reflection or to do something you enjoy.
These are really valuable insights, and it's amazing how all 10 Stoic secrets we've discussed work together to help us master our minds.
They do. As we wrap up our deep dive into Stoicism, remember that the power to shape your reality lies within you. You now have a set of ancient but incredibly relevant tools to develop greater mental strength, tranquility, and resilience.
Absolutely. Carry these 10 secrets with you as you face the challenges of life. Let the storms come. You are now better prepared to be the master of your own mind.
Embrace each day as an opportunity to practice these principles. Cultivate a life filled with purpose, balance, and unshakable inner peace. And never forget the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into Stoicism. May you find serenity and fulfillment as you cultivate mastery over your own mind, your greatest ally in living a good life. Until next time, remember the calm strength of a true Stoic. If this episode gives you something to think about, support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who could use a dose of stillness in the storm.